Title: Into the Abyss, the Forest That Eats Sound. Intro hook. It was the silence that got to him first. Not the kind of silence that fills a quiet room, or settles over a mountaintop. This was deeper. Hollow. Like sound had been stolen from the air. Matthew Greaves was an experienced solo hiker. He'd tackled harsh terrain in Alaska, crossed frozen fjords in Scandinavia, and even scaled a portion of the Andes without a guide. But he would later tell investigators, and the journalists, and the psychiatrists, that nothing had prepared him for this. A forest where birds didn't sing. Where footsteps didn't echo. Where even his own voice sounded muffled, swallowed by the trees. They call it Whispering Pines on the maps, tucked deep within the Olympic wilderness. But no one who's been in far enough calls it that anymore. They call it the forest that eats sound. Rising tension. Matthew started his hike at dawn. The ranger at the outpost hadn't seemed concerned. No reception out there, he'd said, handing over the clipboard. But you've got a GPS beacon, right? He had one. And extra batteries. Rations for 7 days. A tent, bear spray, and a satellite phone. He wasn't stupid. He just didn't expect the silence to unnerve him the way it did. It started after mile 6. The forest thickened unnaturally fast. Sunlight dimmed. The breeze that had followed him for hours vanished, and so did the usual sounds: no birds, no squirrels, no wind. Just his own breathing, and even that seemed dulled. He paused by a downed log and took a sip from his canteen. The water hit his throat louder than it should have. Gulping echoed in his skull. The snapping of a twig beneath his boot was barely a whisper. Still, he pressed on. He always pressed on. By evening, he reached a clearing and set up camp. The silence wrapped around the site like a suffocating blanket. He tried speaking aloud to himself to break the tension, but his own voice sounded wrong. As if he were speaking into a vacuum. The fire crackled, but it made no sound. He didn't sleep well that night. By day 2, things got worse. Matthew noticed strange patterns in the bark of trees. Like deep scratches, no, not scratches. Symbols. Circular. Interwoven. Old. He'd seen something similar in a book once, pre-contact tribal markings. But they weren't on any documented trail. He tried to mark his own path. Trail tape, neon orange. He tied some to a low branch and walked 20 paces forward. When he turned around, the tape was gone. He backtracked. Nothing. Not even a torn edge. He climbed a small rise to get his bearings, hoping to catch a glimpse of the horizon. But the trees stretched endlessly in every direction, dense and still. Too still. He realized he hadn't seen any animal, since yesterday morning. That night, he lit another fire. Still no sound. But something moved in the dark. Just beyond the flicker of the flames. A tall, black shape. Lean and angular. When he pointed his headlamp at it, there was nothing there. He barely slept at all. Climax: on the 3rd day, the path disappeared entirely. No trail. No markers. Even his GPS stopped showing coordinates, just a blinking red error. The satellite phone displayed a signal, but any call attempt dropped immediately. The screen flickered oddly, like it was underwater. He walked for hours in one direction. Nothing changed. The trees began to close in tighter. Branches arched overhead like a ribcage. Roots curled up from the ground, making progress slower with every step. That night, something new happened. A sound. A single sound. A whisper. It came from the trees. No direction. No source. Just one word: Matthew. He froze. spun around. The fire cast no light beyond the circle of stones. Every shadow looked like it could move. His breath caught in his throat. Then he heard it again. Closer this time. More urgent. Matthew. He grabbed his pack, left the fire burning, and ran. Branches clawed at his face. Roots tripped his feet. He stumbled through the dark until he collapsed beside a hollowed-out tree stump. He crawled inside and clutched his knife like it would matter. The whisper returned, right outside the stump. But this time it wasn't a voice. It was his own. His own voice, whispering his name. Twist when he woke, the sky was crimson. Not sunrise, something else. The light filtered through the trees like blood and water. And he wasn't alone. Figures stood in the clearing. Dozens. Thin. Silent. Faces blank, like tree bark molded into human shape. Eyes like knotholes. No mouths. They watched him, but didn't move. He ran again. Days passed. Or hours. He lost track of time. The sun never fully rose. The sky stayed red. He started hearing other voices. His mother. A childhood friend. His ex-wife. Each time he turned to look, there was no one there. Until he heard himself again. Matthew. We found you. A mirror stood in the clearing. Tall, ancient, framed in twisted roots. In the reflection, he saw himself. But thinner. Hollow-eyed. Grinning. The reflection lifted its hand. So did Matthew. The reflection opened its mouth. And sound rushed out. Screaming. Crying. Laughter. Gunshots. Static. The sound of storms and oceans and dying animals. It poured from the mirror like a dam bursting. He fell to his knees, hands over his ears. The last thing he saw was the reflection stepping out of the mirror and taking his place. Conclusion: Matthew Greaves was found wandering a service road 5 days later. His eyes were wide and empty. He didn't speak. Wouldn't respond. He had a pulse. He was breathing. But he was gone. Doctors called it a fugue state. Severe trauma-induced psychosis. But the ranger who first spoke to him swears he said something. Just once. In the ranger's words, he looked me in the eye and whispered, "Don't follow the silence. It's not empty. It's waiting." They searched Whispering Pines for weeks. No trail. No symbols. No clearing. Nothing. But some hikers still swear they hear something in that forest. Not wind. Not birds. A whisper. Your name. Title: Snowblind, trapped beneath a frozen sky. Intro hook: they said it would be a light dusting. Just a gentle storm. A few inches, maybe. But by the time it ended, there was nothing left but white. And silence. And something in the snow that didn't leave footprints. Rising tension. Lisa and Darren had been married for 6 months. They were still in that warm, buzzing phase of love where every shared cup of coffee felt like a ceremony. Their honeymoon had been postponed, budget constraints, career hurdles, but they finally escaped to a remote cabin deep in the Montana wilderness. No phone signal. No Wi-Fi. No neighbors for miles. Just the two of them, the crisp smell of pine, a roaring fireplace, and a horizon dusted with snow. It was paradise. The first day passed in laughter and cuddles, soft music playing on a battery-powered speaker, and the kind of silence that only exists in places untouched by man. On the second night, the storm arrived. It came sudden, like a switch flipped in the sky. The trees swayed and groaned. The wind wasn't howling, it was breathing. Long, slow exhales that seemed to push against the walls of the cabin. They weren't worried. They had supplies. They had each other. But Lisa woke at 3:17 a.m. to the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching in the snow. Not wandering. Not aimless. Circling. Darren checked through the frosted window. Nothing. No tracks, no animals. The next morning, Lisa went outside. Still no tracks. But she was sure of what she'd heard. That night, the knocks started. Not on the door. On the wall. 3 sharp raps. Just after sunset. Each time Darren checked, he found nothing. But Lisa was unraveling. Her dreams filled with frostbitten whispers and faces pressed against glass. On day 4, the snow covered the lower windows. The power generator sputtered and died. They were trapped in a capsule of white. And something outside wanted in. They tried radioing for help. Static. Lisa began hearing her name in the storm. Not shouted. Whispered. On day 5, Darren tried digging a tunnel out. He didn't return. The last sound Lisa heard from outside was a scream swallowed by the wind. Then silence. That night, she heard Darren's voice at the door. Lisa. Let me in. Please. It's cold. But it wasn't him. She looked through the peephole. Saw his face. Frozen in a wide smile. Gray, cracked skin. Black, depthless eyes. And then he whispered, "You're all alone now." Climax, Lisa blocked every door and window. She burned the last of the firewood. She whispered to herself to cover the sounds of something pacing in the attic, an attic she hadn't known was there until the storm began. When she finally opened the trapdoor to the attic, all she found were Darren's boots. And a snowman. Small. Child-sized. Its eyes were made of stones. Wet. Bleeding. She sealed the attic. By day 9, the storm began to fade. She forced the cabin door open. Staggered into a landscape so white it blurred the sky and ground. Behind her, footsteps. Crunching. Deliberate. She turned around. Nothing. Except a new snowman. Larger. Adult-sized. Its mouth was wide open. Inside, something glinted. Darren's wedding ring. Twist, they found Lisa a week later, barefoot and nearly blind from snow exposure. Wandering near a ranger outpost, speaking in fragmented sentences. She only said one full thing: the storm wasn't the danger. It was the thing inside it. When the search team reached the cabin, they found nothing. No Darren. No bodies. But in the attic were dozens of small snowmen. Each one holding something different. Gloves. Teeth. All melting. From the inside out.